Chapter 5. The massive Fire Nation warship cut through the churning white-capped ocean. On the deck, a guard looked through a telescope at a second ship just a short distance away. A tall, muscular man stepped onto the deck. His penetrating brown eyes peered out from a strong, fierce-looking face. The guard immediately stood at attention. "Commander Zao, we've found him, sir," the guard said crisply. The commander peered into the telescope and spotted a small Fire Nation ship. On its deck stood Prince Zuko. "The banished prince," Commander Zao said, smirking. "Let's offer him lunch." Zao ordered his crew to manoeuvre their vessel closer to Zuko's ship. "Prince Zuko," Commander Zao shouted from the deck when they had pulled alongside the smaller ship. "Why don't you and your uncle join us here for lunch? We would be honoured to have you as our guests." A short while later, Commander Zao and his guards gathered in the ship's main mess hall. The guards laughed loudly and swapped stories between bites of food. Seated at the commander's table, Zuko and Oro looked cautiously at the group as they ate their meal. Commander Zao stood and the room went silent. "I wanted to thank the great General Oro and the young Prince Zuko for dining with us," he began. "I remember watching Prince Zuko playing with all the little girls when he was a boy." Zuko clenched his jaw and balled his hand into a fist. Zao continued. "As you all know, the Fire Lord banished his son and will not let him return to the throne unless he finds the Avatar." Commander Zao bent over and looked under the table. "Wait, Prince Zuko," he said in mocking tone. "I think I see the Avatar. He's been hiding under this table for 100 years. No wonder you couldn't find him." The guards in the mess hall looked at one another and stifled their laughter. "I have found him," Zuko announced emphatically. The guards exploded with laughter and all eyes turned to the prince. "The Avatar was killed in the raid on the air nomads and was never reborn," Zao said, his tone turning deadly serious. "Don't tell such lies." Zuko's hands began to tremble. The flames on all the candles on Zuko's table started bending toward him, growing larger as his anger increased. Seeing this, Oro put his comforting hand on his nephew's arm. Zuko took a deep breath and the candles settled. But Commander Zao was not finished. "You may wonder why the wise and honourable Fire Lord would send his son on this impossible task when the entire Fire Nation has been searching for the Avatar for 100 years and has found nothing. Well, sometimes children need to be taught a lesson because they don't know how to behave. I commend the Fire Lord's discipline, for example. It seems that I need to remind Prince Zuko that during his banishment he is considered an enemy of the Fire Nation and is not allowed to wear the uniform of a Fire Nation soldier." Zao stared straight at Zuko, who squirmed uncomfortably in his seat. "But we will let him wear it today," Zao continued, "like a child, in a costume." Zuko could take no more. He shoved his chair away from the table and stood defiantly, looking Commander Zao right in the eyes. "One day my father will take me back," he hissed, "and you will bow down before me." Then he turned and rushed from the mess hall. Oro stood and bowed at his host. "Thank you for the delicious food and hospitality, Commander," he said. Then he followed his nephew down a ladder and back onto his own ship. "We have to hunt him down, Uncle," Zuko said, staring back up at the larger ship, "before anyone else finds him first." The great sky bison flew through the air, heading from the southern air temple to a forest on the edge of the Earth Kingdom with Katara and Sokka, and Aang on his back. There they set up camp. Ang sat off by himself, still trying to make sense of what he'd just seen at the temple and of his bizarre journey to the spirit world. Katara worried about him. She saw how devastated he was about coming to terms with the loss of everyone he had ever known and loved. And then there was the display of glowing and wind in the prayer field. Was that what all airbenders did? How could she know? Ang was one of the last of his kind. "Are you okay?" she asked Ang, walking over and sitting beside him. Sokka got up and joined his sister at Ang's side. Ang just nodded. "You know," she said, "my grandmother thinks because you're an airbender that you might be the Avatar." Ang ignored her comment. "How much does the Fire Nation control?" he asked. "A lot of villages in the Earth Kingdom, like around here," she explained. "They haven't been able to conquer the big cities like Bang Sing Se, but they are making plans, I'm sure." Sokka, never as patient as his sister, couldn't stand it any more. "So, are you the Avatar, Ang?" he asked bluntly. Ang nodded his head, but remained silent. Sokka and Katara also sat quietly, trying to absorb this incredible news. "Whoa!" Sokka said, finally breaking the silence. "Unbelievable," Katara added. "But I have to tell you guys something," Ang said urgently. Before Ang could continue, a young boy burst out of the woods, his face filled with terror. Spotting the trio, the boy stopped and glanced back over his shoulder. "What is this?" Sokka asked suspiciously, scrambling to his feet along with the others. A group of Fire Nation soldiers stepped from the woods, at the same spot where the boy had come out. Sokka grabbed his boomerang. Katara stuck a water-bending stance and fingered the small water pouch that hung from her waist. "Stay hidden," Katara whispered to Ang, who immediately pulled the hood of his cloak up over his head and turned his face away from the soldiers. The leader of the soldiers pointed at the frightened boy. "That child is being arrested," the soldier announced. "For what?" Katara asked. "He was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree," the soldier explained, rubbing his head. "It really hurt, too." "He can bend earth?" Katara asked curiously. "Earth bending is forbidden in this village," the soldier blustered, "by order of the Fire Lord." "Leave him alone," Katara said through the tightly clenched teeth. "You're not taking him anywhere." Sokka immediately grabbed the boy by the shoulders and pulled him behind his back. "No one's taking anyone away," he announced defiantly. The boy peeked out from behind Sokka. Katara stepped forward and opened her water pouch. In one smooth motion, she raised her hands and spread her fingers wide. Water rose up out of the water pouch and spread into the shape of a fan. Then it froze onto solid ice, shifted back to liquid, and froze again. "She's a bender," one of the soldiers cried. Katara pulled her hands back, then whipped them forwards towards the soldiers, hoping to use her frozen fan to attack. "Yee!" she yelled as she unleashed her water-bending move. But the water didn't fly forward as she had hoped. Turning around to see what happened, she saw Sokka's arms and chest were wrapped in ice. "Katara!" he whined, trying in vain to break free. The soldiers moved quickly, slapping handcuffs on Sokka, Katara, Aang and the young earthbending boy. The flying lemur bat Aang had befriended at the Southern Air Temple and named Momo was sitting on his shoulder. Katara unfroze the water that covered Sokka and returned it to her water pouch. "You need to get better at bending water before you pull something like that," Sokka grumbled angrily as the soldiers led them through a small Earth Kingdom village. "Okay, leave me alone, Sokka," Katara replied, feeling terrible about what she'd done. "I'm sorry." Peering out from under the hood of his cloak, Aang looked around at the village. The houses were falling apart, the roads were broken and uneven. Poor children in ragged clothes lined the streets. He was shocked by the conditions. It was all wrong. The people of the Earth Kingdom were proud and self-sufficient. They wouldn't have let this happen. This was obviously the result of poor treatment by the occupying Fire Nation army. The soldiers led the group to a prison camp they had set up just outside the village. The three friends and the Earth Kingdom boy were shoved through a gateway of a tall metal fence. The gate slammed shut behind them. Inside the prison yard, Aang saw men from the Earth Kingdom sitting on the ground, huddled in blankets. They looked weary and defeated. The boy who had been captured with them ran to his father, who sat in a corner. The man hugged the child close to him. "This is my dad," the boy said. "Hello," the father greeted them sadly. "The Fire Nation's plan is obviously to suppress all other bending," Sokka whispered to Aang. "How did this happen to your village?" Aang asked the man. "The Fire Nation sent soldiers," the man explained. "We fought them and defeated them. But then they sent their machines, huge machines made of metal. There was nothing we could do. Even earthbenders can't bend metal. Those who could not bend were allowed to live in peace if we benders were imprisoned." Aang was shocked. He refused to accept that these powerful people were helpless. He decided to inspire them into action. Stepping to the centre of the prison yard, still careful to keep his tattoos hidden, Aang addressed the prisoners. "Earthbenders," he shouted, "you don't know me, but I know you. My teacher used to tell me stories about your courage." All eyes in the prison yard turned towards the strange hooded boy. A few of the Fire Nation guards positioned outside the fence turned to see what was happening as well. "Why are you acting this way?" Aang continued, his tone growing defiant. "You are powerful, amazing people. You do not need to live like this. There is earth right beneath your feet. The ground is an extension of who you are." Some prisoners grumbled. Others waved their hands dismissively. Most turned away. They had been disheartened for so long. The Fire Nation guards who had been listening looked at one another and laughed. Katara's eyes filled with tears at the hopelessness of these people and at Aang's efforts to rouse them into action. Realising that he was losing his audience, Aang shouted, "If the Avatar had returned, would that mean anything to you?" The Fire Nation guards immediately stopped laughing. A few of the prisoners turned back towards Aang. "The Avatar is dead," one of them yelled back. "If he was here, he would protect us," shouted another. Aang locked eyes with Katara as if he was silently letting her know what was coming next. Then he turned back to the prisoners. "My name is Aang," he cried, "and I am the Avatar." The prison yard fell silent. "I ran away," Aang continued. "I'm sorry, but I'm back now." An urgent murmuring spread through the yard. The Fire Nation guards rushed through the gate and surrounded Aang. He looked around from guard to guard, maintaining a serious expression. "It's time for you to stop doing this," he told them firmly. "The Avatar would have to be an airbender," one of the guards said, sneering at Aang. Are you an airbender, boy?" The guards all laughed loudly and "I think not, boy," the guard crackled. "We killed all the airbenders, so the Avatar will never return." "Not all the airbenders," Aang announced. He threw off his cloak, revealing his tattoos. The guards immediately took a step back, stunned. The earth-bending prisoners let out a collective gasp at the sight of the small, bold boy and his airbending tattoos. "I am the last airbender," Aang said proudly. The guards charged Aang at once, but the boy was too quick. He jumped into the air, spinning like a top, and floated up, creating a whirlwind below him that flung the guards back in all directions. Seeing this, the earthbenders stood, their eyes opened wide. "It's true," one of the prisoners cried. "The Avatar has returned. He's come to save us." Gaining confidence once again, the earthbenders unleashed their powers, bending earth against the Fire Nation's guard to help the Avatar. Aang stood ready for the next attack. The guards slowly climbed to their feet. stared at him for a moment, then turned and ran from the prison yard. A huge cheer rose up from the prisoners as they watched the Fire Nation guards flee the prison. Sokka joined the celebrating earthbenders. "Way to go, Aang!" he cried. "Thank you, Avatar," said the father of the earthbending boy. "You have given us back our hope." Then he joined his fellow earthbenders as they left the prison yard and headed back to their village. Katara embraced Aang. "You know, Aang, he's right," she said when the two joined Sokka. "The greatest thing you have to offer is hope." Aang pondered that thought as he and his friends left the prison, heading back to the forest where Appa was waiting for them.